Child inclusive mediation. It is a buzzword at the moment, and a lot of people are wondering, should I choose child inclusive mediation for my custody negotiations? Welcome up.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
Now, today's episode is a little bit niche, so I guess if you don't have kids, you probably don't need to listen to this, but if you do have kids and if you're at any part of the process, whether you've done mediation before or you're already in court, this is actually, I think, a really important episode to listen to because we get this question asked a lot. But before we get started, just a reminder, this is just a general discussion. Mum is not your lawyer. I am not a lawyer, and we don't know your circumstances, so must always please get legal advice about your particular situation. And there may be discussions of family violence, and if there is and you feel triggered by that, please call 13 11 14 Lifeline for support. And if you feel like or are worried that you are experiencing family violence, please call 1-800-RESPECT in Australia and find the right support services for you.
Hello, I'm Laura, a divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
All right. So let's think about this for a minute. You're a concerned parent. You're listening to this right now. You've had to tell your kids that you're breaking up. You've told your kids you're breaking up. You've told your kids that mummy and daddy or mummy and mummy or daddy and daddy aren't going to be together anymore and you're moving away or whatever is happening in your situation. And the first step along the way to deciding on what's going to happen with the kids, if you can't decide it yourself, is usually mediation. And the mediator says to you, have you considered child inclusive mediation? And it's usually the first time any of these people will have heard it at all. And we thought that it might be a good idea to do an episode on this because it might be the first time you've ever heard of it. And initially you would think, well, child inclusive mediation sounds like a good idea. Because, of course, your children would be the first thing you'd be wanting to make sure were being taken care of. So that's why we thought today we were definitely going to do an episode to touch on this, look at all the points. We're going to talk about what does it mean, what happens, what are the concerns you might need to know as a parent. We're going to discuss when child consultants might do more harm than good. And we're also going to be looking at comparing it to a family report and what you need to know about that. And also trying to protect your child when going through this process. What do you need to consider? And any final thoughts that Mum might have that she might want to put into this. The reason that Mum and I are giggling a little bit is not because of what the situation is, because just the thought of putting your child into this situation and going through it. Mum and I have both been there and we know how horrible it is. It's like ripping your heart out, breaking their little hearts. But it is such an important conversation that needs to happen because no one's really having it. And Mum's got very stern opinions about it.
I do.
Okay, so let's just start off with one. What does child inclusive mediation mean?
It means that prior to the mediation between you and your partner about what happens to the child gets to meet with someone, maybe a child consultant or a psychologist or someone, for an hour. And they are able to talk about their experience of the divorce and separation and what they want to happen. It's only an hour and the kids are not allowed to be asked directly.
So basically, child inclusive mediation is where someone sits down with your child and asks them some questions, whatever those questions might be, watch them do drawings, watch them paint, watch them play with puppets, toys, whatever. And then they attend the mediation for some or all of it on behalf of the child, basically, or writes a report and sends the report in and presents that report to the parents before they begin their mediation. So that's what child inclusive mediation is. It's not a family report. It's not a child impact statement. It's none of those things. It's a new thing that's getting pushed around a bit more than it used to be.
And it sounds so benign. It sounds so child-focused that a lot of people go, of course, without thinking through the implications for the child. And I guess that's why we wanted to do this today. It's all very well for me saying what I think about it, but we need to take you all on a journey to understand the impacts on the kids.
So it's often presented as a way for the child to have a voice in your divorce discussions. It's confidential. The consultant only shares what the child agrees to, and we're going to talk about that in a minute as well. And it may sound super helpful in theory, but here's the things that people really need to understand and the serious concerns that Mum and I both share for different reasons on this topic. So let's talk about one of the obvious ones in the room is that the risks and the emotional impact on your child and your case. So first of all, if any of you have got a manipulative and controlling ex and they know that there's going to be child inclusive mediation, are they going to be able to stop themselves from putting pressure on your child to say something? So how likely is it if you've got a high conflict, manipulative, controlling ex that they're going to be able to withhold pressuring that child to say, hey, make sure you say that you want to be with me most of the time, or make sure you point out that you have more fun at my house?
Or tell her that you don't like Mummy's new boyfriend.
And if you're going through an abusive divorce, if there's been family violence, I think I saw a post by One Mum's Battle, and I think she summed this up quite well. And this could be either way. So women could be women can put pressure, and mothers can put pressure on children to say things, as well as men and fathers can put pressure on children to say things. But even grown adults struggle to speak up about abusive relationships. Expecting a child to carry that burden is another form of trauma for that child. And I think that's pretty valid in this situation. So, okay, so ask yourself, how likely is it for your ex to not put pressure on your child, even manipulatively in subversive ways? Because, Mum, we see this for family reports and other things that we're going to touch on later anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. You see it all the time. And little kids, if they talk about the trauma, they are hurting themselves more because they are related to either of those parents. They're related to both of them. So it's almost like saying something bad against themselves or being told to say something bad against themselves. It's much more tormenting than perhaps an adult coming out of an adult relationship discussing trauma.
That's right. Now, point number 2. The consultant only spends an hour with your child.
Yes.
And Mum, you also said the consultant doesn't spend any time with the parents.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
yes,
so you
they
go.
Don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they spend an hour. The model seems to be they spend an hour with the child. They're not supposed to ask any direct questions. Supposed to ask open-ended questions. But to a little kid, for someone they've just that minute met, right? They don't know this person. Could be a man, could be a woman. To say, so what do you think about living with Mum, or how do you feel about it? That's just as traumatic. And anyone who's had kids knows they'll clam up. They're not going to tell a complete stranger these deep, dark thoughts, particularly if it feels disloyal to either of their parents.
And if they don't meet the parents and see the child in action with the parents, they've got no idea what the family dynamics are like.
They won't. That's right. And the consultant becomes a mere mouthpiece of what may be a slightly garbled or immature view of the child. And you're right, they don't get to see if that child's point of view has been influenced by a parent. They don't get to watch the body language of the child with their parent, to observe the parent's interaction. They just hear what the child says. And it seems to be a sop to, it just seems to be, we've been told the kids don't feel involved in the situation. We'll do this, and then the kids can feel involved. Now, to the children, that's getting dressed, getting up, getting dressed somewhere, rushing to get on time to an appointment, to some person they don't know. The parents leave them. They're in the room with this person. It is stressful. And then afterwards, you know what happens? For them, crickets, nothing. They don't hear about it because the family court won't let the clients or their parents discuss the cases with their child. That's not child focus. We've known for years that doesn't help. Okay, so this child, it's in a little vacuum. It happens and then they never know what comes out of it. But it may be at the end of a court case, they'll remember their little bit of input and wonder if it's their fault that mummy's upset or daddy's upset.
Well, if you've got a manipulative and controlling ex or a high conflict ex or a really highly stressed out parent who is driving the child to a thing where they're basically in their head going, they're going to tell them whether I'm a good parent or a bad parent or they like me or they don't. The stress on the parents about that. And then when they pick the child up, the temptation to say, what did you say?
So, what did you say?
What did you say?
Yeah.
And if some outcome from it is horrible and the parent is then horrible too, the child's going to pick up on that and feel guilty and horrible. But look, and the sad fact and reality of that, it has to happen in family reports, court-ordered family reports. This has to happen, but they do it over a whole day. They talk to the parents. They talk to the children for a long time, and they're designed to look for things. But a 1-hour session with not
just the child
is just not going to cut the mustard in my understanding of the situation.
Yep.
Mum, you also pointed out that they mentioned that the process with the child is confidential. And so what the child says, they have to ask permission from the child to tell the parents. So what are your thoughts on that?
But actually, is that actually confidential? I mean, a child actually doesn't have the right to say this is confidential, and the child probably doesn't also have the understanding and to be able to say, tell my parents this. They'll be going, don't tell them what I've said, and letting a child, and I'm thinking here, 4 years old seems to be the cutoff age, but I'm thinking here, putting that on a child, you can tell me, but you can tell me I can't tell your parents. Therefore, the only person in the room, if the consultant goes to the mediation at all, that's the only person in the room who really knows what the child wants to say, but is too afraid or didn't want to let the parents say. It's pointless. They're sitting there. They're not going to be making decisions. And unless they can tell the parents where they're coming from, and they're bound, apparently, because the child said, no, you can't, it just muddies the whole process.
Now,
muddies it.
You also pointed out the consultant can later be called as a witness in proceedings.
Well, I think they could be. I'd be very inclined. If a child later on, of their own volition perhaps, that they told the consultant that, that this parent was a terrible person, but they only did it because daddy said or mummy said, and they say, don't tell them, right? That consultant is in possession of information which the person who was complained about might want to use as evidence of the other person's manipulation of the child. And you would think there's nothing to stop a person subpoenaing a child consultant or the inclusive child mediator person because they were technically expert witnesses, chosen by both parties, and they may have information that no one else has.
Okay. All right. So, don't stress out. We're going to touch on some other things and give you some alternatives, but we're just going to touch on all these points so you have thought about them intensely before this is thrown in your lap. The other thing is, Mum, you've mentioned, and we've touched on it, there's a worry about kids in divorces being over-interviewed.
Now, that is the reason the family court brought in single expert witnesses in the past, so that we didn't get the kids being interviewed by different psychologists. There were cases, Laura, I can remember, of people who took their kids from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor until they got a diagnosis that they wanted. And the kids were overexposed to the interview process. They also used to shop the kids around to psychologists and counsellors and so forth. By the time a court expert, a family report writer for the court, sat down to make an in-depth statement or in-depth assessment of this family, the children have already been interviewed so many times that they can become a bit wooden in their responses. They're aware of the process, that they may have a tendency to embellish or minimise. And the thing I remind
over it. They're just over it.
Yeah. But look, you get a child, you pick them up from school. You guys were all the same, you and your brothers and sisters. You pick them up from school and you say, "Hi, darling, how was today?" And if they were chatty, and you were always chatty, tell me all about it. It was wonderful. The drive home, I got the lot. The next parent who asks you how you went today, you'll go, oh, yeah, it's fine. You know, one and done. One and done. And these kids will carry, I think, are being traumatized for no reason, because I don't think there's much value in the evidence or in 1 hour what they convey.
And the child may also say what they think their parents want to hear, not what they truly feel. And that is a consideration. And then the 1 hour meeting, the person who's spoken to the child then attends the mediation or writes something and presents it at the mediation. And then can either completely send your mediation off the rails if, unlike a family report where I think you get it way in advance of anything, that gives you time to process it, read it, sit down, understand it, pages and pages of information. I don't think they can write much in a 1 hour session. So they're going to not have much to say, a short whatever. And then if it says in there, oh, actually your kid doesn't want to live with you at all, could you imagine how unproductive the mediation would become?
Yes.
Because that's all the parent would be thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't think that the children are able, I really don't think the children are able to be honest in that way. And if you've got a person who hears that, say the interviewer says, well, actually little Johnny doesn't want to see the father at all. Can you imagine if the mother is manipulative and controlling, then she's going to seize on that. And that will be their banner going forward. Also, the people who are best placed to decide a child's future usually are the parents. If you are having to go to mediation to resolve issues, there is some sort of conflict there, right? And both of you, it would be unlikely if both of you had the same level of concern for the child's welfare or child-focused, you know what I mean? If you were both child-focused, you would have sorted it out. If you can't sort it out and you have to go to mediation, then there is a temptation that one or other parent is going to try and manipulate the situation. And having a third person there who doesn't know your child, who doesn't know any of you, to be purporting to be the person who understands your child the best is just rubbish.
It's insane.
You know, because even if both of you have a slightly different point of view, you know your child. It's not like it's someone you've never met.
And I personally, when I heard, child inclusive mediation, in one part of me, I was like, thinking about the best interests of the children, that's great. But then the other part of me was like, dragging my kids to something would be horrible. But the way it's being presented to people, it's like, this is the best decision for your child. If you don't choose this option, you're not being child-focused. You're not thinking about the best interests of the children. But you've got to look at it from a perspective of the journey that you're going to be on. And like we've just said, the family reports that you may have to do eventually it's a long day's worth of interviewing. It's assessing all the documents. It's looking at all the things that have happened. It's talking to other experts. It's literally a big microscope on your family. It's not a 1 hour chat with the kid. And a 1 hour chat with the kid's not going to say, actually, my psychologist says I have this and this. And my mum's manipulative and controlling and my dad's avoidant and they're all struggling. No child's going to say that. It just breaks my heart to think that there's an emotional manipulation going on there with parents who want to do the right thing, actually been manipulated into doing something that's probably not that's the best for their child. And
you'll sometimes get it'll be the other parent, their lawyer, and even your lawyer may say to you, what objection could you possibly have against child inclusive mediation? And I mean, don't fall for it. It's not legal. It's not a requirement. And also, one of the studies from Canada said that the kids often don't understand how important every word they utter is kind of in that situation, you know. So if you try to play it down so the children aren't stressed, it's fine, you're going to talk to this nice person, you're going to play games, and that they may not realise the stakes. You know, they may not realise how important their word or two may be. And also, if you've got lawyer on the other side, the other person on the other side, and even your lawyer badgering you about this child inclusive mediation, the key question here is, who is going to be the person who interviews your child? Do they have a connection with any of the groups out there?
Do they have qualifications?
What qualifications you can have
can you review the information that's being shared? Who gets to see the consultant's notes? Is there a video recording or an audio recording? Where is this put? Who looks at? So there's so many questions and so many concerns, and it's so open that I think I wouldn't choose that option.
I think the kids, whoever it is, will feel that something they said, if they know that it's going to be used, will feel that something they said was the reason it all went one way or another, and they're going to feel guilty. It's an unnecessary in involving them when they actually don't have any clout. It's not between them and the parents.
Well, I think an interesting perspective to add to this, and I know we've heard about this in our members' Q&As, some of the older kids have been put through child inclusive mediation, and they've been more directly asked than, say, draw a picture of mummy's house and draw a picture of daddy's house. And the kids are a bit older. They're not stupid. They know their parents are getting divorced. They know their parents are fighting. They know that they're doing this interview meeting because they want to know what the kid thinks. And the kid's a teenager or whatever. And in one of the websites I read about what happens in a child inclusive mediation, it says, first of all, we tell the child that they're the boss.
Oh, my God.
That's literally one of the sentences in it. And if you tell a teenager you're the boss, and then ask them questions around, basically the kid's going to pick up, whose house do you like living at better? The idea in their head is then, okay, well, I get a say in this. I get a say. And maybe the other parent will say, you're old enough now, you can make a decision where you want to live. Make sure you tell them you want to live with me, or and that's where you get those kids that all of a sudden just bail. They get this idea in their head that, oh, well, they asked me what I thought and that's what I think. And if you didn't agree to that, that's your problem. I'm a teenager. I'm going to do what I like. Like, it can give the kids a false sense of they get to choose.
Well, especially if the outcome doesn't turn out to be what they were saying, they can feel very betrayed. If they knew very well what it was about and it doesn't turn out that way, they may become quite upset and rebellious. I think too that a child of 14 or 15 who has had a parent who has been a little bit offhand with them throughout their lives, and that parent suddenly becomes hyper-focused on the child and favours them with everything they always wished this parent would do, taking them out, buying them things, one-on-one time. Even a mature-ish 14 or 15-year-old can have their head turned by that parent who is really only doing it, it seems, fresh out of the box for a purpose. It may be that they then very focused on that parent, not realising that, in fact, in a lot of cases, it's just a ploy and they get dropped like a hot potato afterwards. But the kids are only human and they long for both parents to love them. And if one parent suddenly starts showing up for them, then they are going to have their heads turned. And that's why a family report is better, where a parent, the report writers, can see the dynamics between the child and the parent, and the other parent can tell the facts about how things have changed.
So that's one alternative, Mum, a family report, which may, if you're arguing anyway, it's probably going to happen if you end up in court.
Yeah.
There's also in the court appointed mediations, there are child experts and there's court-appointed family consultant kind of people. So there's literally like child expert or parenting experts. They don't speak to the kids.
No.
They read all the court material. They read the family report. And then they sit in on your mediation and they pipe up when they've got information from the reports, the affidavits and everything on making sure you guys are being child-focused, which is more helpful, I think, than someone who's just spoken to a child for an hour. If you're separated or about to be and you need to get everything finalised and sorted but you don't know what to do next,
or you're looking for a way to do your own divorce and settlement without spending thousands of dollars on lawyer, then you already know what you need to do, and that is to sign up and become a member of the DIY Divorce Blueprint. Empower, educate and equip yourself with the legal know-how and the tools you need to get divorced or de facto separated and finally settle. Work through this course at your own pace without feeling confused, lost, scared or overwhelmed of all the family law legal jargon and processes. Let us walk with you through this journey and show you
Yes. And my understanding of those child impact reports and the child court experts is, whilst they may not be experts on your child, even if they've read all the material, they understand the developmental needs of children at various ages. And so they can give important, I think, feedback and input, which is missing from a child inclusive mediation. I do think telling a teenage or tween-age kid that they're the boss and they're in control will could go straight to their heads. B, though, could create a terrible burden for them as they get older. And the whole point of the Family Law Act and family law practice, from where I've been doing it since 1983, 84, it has been to keep the kids out of it. The only time they talk to anyone usually is the family report writer. And now they are speaking to the independent children's lawyers.
Yeah.
Yes.
And isn't that enough? Isn't that enough? When you think about that journey and how stressful and horrible it is for you, and you may only just be at the start. And I pray and hope for you that you get through doing one mediation and you're done. But if you've got a manipulative and controlling ex, if you've got a really tricky case, it might be a couple of mediations. It might have to put your foot in the door of the court. You might have to do a court-appointed mediation. You might have to do a family report. You might have to do these other things. And you're taking your kids on that journey with you if you take them to all of these events. If you keep the kids living their happy little lives as best as you can while you go through this earthquake, and only involve them when you absolutely have to, I think your child will be better off, because you're just creating stress and confusion. And I don't see if it helps, if it's in their best interest or if it helps their well-being.
Well, what if you have multiple mediations and the children keep getting involved? And if you've come out of an abusive relationship, hurting you through your child is something estranged partners sometimes do. And every time there's a child inclusive mediation, it's another opportunity to hurt you through the child. And I don't think there's any utility in it. Look, if you want to do it, I mean, if our listeners think it's a good thing to do, by all means. But I just want you to know it's not really something the court's keen on, unless you're ordered to do one with the children. I've not seen an order like that ever. But yeah, it's really, it sounds great, but in practice, I'd be very cautious, particularly if you're coming out of a coercive control environment. You may find that's just another avenue to hurt you through the children.
All right.
So
I'm just going to read out some questions to ask yourself before you make this decision. And it may help you make your decision. And of course, you speak to your lawyer, speak to your psychologist, who is also another person you could talk to. Your child psychologist may give you plenty of insight without having to put them through another discussion with another adult or another person. So I'm going to ask these questions, and I just want you to run through them in your head. And I know this felt like a massive rant, but we had to get it out of our system. But really, I'm just going to quickly list the reasons why Mum thinks it's not a good idea. She doesn't like kids being involved in the case. Number one, it's the kids didn't ask you guys to get divorced. It's not their fight, so don't involve them if you can. Number two, you got to check that there may be forces pressuring you or them to say which parent they like better, and you don't want to put your kids through that pressure.
No.
It's 1 hour. So are they really going to be able to understand the dynamics of your family in 1 hour to give you enough information to help a mediation in any way, shape or form? And like Mum said, if your ex is not child-focused, are they even going to care if they say the child doesn't like living with you? Are they still going to want to fight it anyway? So is that actually going to help anything? Number 4, it's confidential, so they have to ask the kids permission anyway to whether or not they want them to tell you what they've said. And they might just say no, and then why the heck did you put them through that whole hour of time anyway? Number 5, kids might not give accurate information. Number 6, the person who was consulting then may become the witness. Number 7, the kids may become used to being interviewed and end up just, when it actually does matter, just not saying anything at all, just clamming up and just being done with it. Number 8, family reports happen later anyway, and it's a better, thorough process, so why expose them to it more than once? Number 9, you're just adding extra child experts, and the court is trying to move away from that. Number 10, the kids and stress. Just think about all the stress you put them through from that. And number 11, it may actually end up causing more issues in your mediation than helpful tips. So, all right, so here are some questions you're going to ask yourself. Question number 1, who requested it, the mediator or the other parent? Question number 2, what information will the consultant be looking for? Question number 3, what qualifications and experience does this consultant have? Are they child psychologists? Are they family lawyers? Have they ever done this before? Next question, has this consultant worked in other cases involving family violence or coercive control, if that's a situation for you? Another question, is the consultation confidential, and what will exactly be shared with the parents and the mediator? Another question is, will my child's words be quoted or summarised, and who will see the report? And will I have an opportunity to correct any misunderstandings? Then when it comes to their safety, has my child been interviewed by anybody else already? And is this necessary? Could this additional interview increase their stress or confusion? And how will the consultant make sure my child isn't feeling pressured or influenced by anyone? I don't even know how.
I mean, how would you? The child is in a strange environment with someone they don't know. And even if it's not direct questioning, goodness me, they know exactly what it's about. They're going to be stressed to the max.
Legal questions to ask. Could the consultant become a witness in the later court proceedings? Make sure you ask that question. Will there be a family report later in our case if it continues to court? Ask your lawyer that question. What are my rights if I don't agree with child inclusive mediation? Ask your lawyer. Also ask the mediator, how do I explain this process to my child in a calm and neutral way? How can I reassure them that there's no right or wrong answers? And what should I do after the meeting to emotionally support my child? These are questions you need to ask them and yourself.
Well, yes, the other side has to be that focused as well on the aftermath for these children. I just can't see the point, to be honest.
So you've got a right to ask questions. You've got a right to press pause. You've got a right to ask for advice from your lawyer, from your psychologist. You just really need to have a think about it. And look, like I said, I was really, when I heard,
quite taken by it.
I thought, oh, this sounds great. But looking at the best interest of the child. But when you think about the process, and a lot of people don't know what the process involves until they get to the next step and the next step and the next step. But you really need to think of it as a whole and think about how often are you putting your kids in it and taking them out, putting them in it and taking them out.
The reason that they have family reports as a single expert witness is to assist the judge in understanding the dynamics of the family, but also the child and the wishes of the child come through that report. And that's important because how else will the judge know what the real reality is? But in a circumstance where it's a mediation, where let's not forget the mediator has no say in the outcome, it is just you two, you and your ex, talking about your kids. What is the point of having someone interview the child and come in and tell you, the parents, what's best for the child? And it's no point them telling the mediator it's like the bird on the Bicky tin. They're not in it. So it's just nonsense. I see it as weaponizing, a weaponizing feature that is like a trap that a lot of people will set out and go, well, let's do child inclusive mediation. Subtext being, I reckon I can get them to say X, Y, Z.
I reckon I can manipulate this situation. Yes. And look, I don't want to tell people not to do it. We don't want to tell people what decisions to make. You've got questions to ask. You've got things to look at. Like when we did the parenting coordinator, why mum doesn't like it, we got a lot of angry messages about it. and we got a lot of thank you messages about it, and we got a heap of I wish I'd listened to this episode before I agreed.
And we had a court case, a full court decision that said the same thing as I did.
So
you're welcome.
Thank you, Mother.
Yes.
This is why we are doing this episode. I hate sounding like we're lecturing or ranting, but sometimes people just need to cover themselves with the reasons why, and then they can explain this to their lawyer. Because I can understand that people may think, oh, I'm going to look bad because I don't look like I'm being child-focused. But in fact, turning this down can potentially mean that you are more child-focused. And so these are serious questions you need to consider, and it is a big deal. And it upsets me a little bit that people are ambushed by this and it is being pushed. That upsets me as well. And I really hope that there is some cases that come out about this as well in the future, because even though it's in the before court process, I do worry that it's like some of the before court process shenanigans. It's being overlooked and being missed. And we're putting this out there to hopefully help some kids and help some parents who are in manipulative situations avoid this trap.
Yes. I mean, family reports have been happening since probably the early 1980s. This child inclusive mediation buzz is very new, and I've yet to see it make an impact in a court setting anyway. So,
okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mum, for your strong opinions on this, and I hope that this helps someone make their decision, or at least makes people think twice before they do any of these things. And we'll be back next week with a legal episode, I believe. And Mum, anything you want to embroider on a cushion?
You know what I'm going to say.
I don't.
Just say no.
Just say no.
You actually have the power over that, okay? You can have mediation. You don't have to have children involved.
Be child-focused, not child-inclusive.
Yeah, no. Now, see, that's the language, isn't it? It's twisting it. It's really, they're not necessary.
They're not
Kids
necessary.
aren't necessary.
Oh,
not in the mediation
kids aren't
process.
necessary in the mediation process.
They just aren't.
No.
You two know your kids. You two know each other. You two know what the options are. And probably each of you knows the other side's failings. Someone who's going to waltz in, having met with the child for 1 hour, I find it absolutely deeply offensive. That person would stand up and tell me what my child wants.
Yes.
Right? And they're not going to change. If I was the mother, they wouldn't change my mind. They wouldn't change my ex's mind. And it doesn't matter what the mediator thinks. So what's the point? And we've just dragged these kids through this for yet another, involvement in the case.
Okay.
And potential pressure and disappointment. So I can say, just say no.
Just say no. And I'm going to batten down the hatches because I know we're going to get some angry
Brace yourself.
emails. But hopefully we've done a service to some people out there and saved some kiddies. So big love to you, Mum. Big love to you guys listening today, and good luck.
Proud of you, Laura. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording